Hi bookish friends, my name is Jackie and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to dive into the summer I turned to August tag. I was very kindly tagged to do this by Mariandrea from Books and Bocadillos. I will leave her channel linked in the description below. The first question is, never have I ever read YA books. Why not, or why do you read YA literature? I don't read YA literature as much as I used to, but I definitely still like to pick these books up from time to time. I used to be a major YA reader, but these days it's just not what I necessarily gravitate towards because I'm no longer in the same place in my life as these young adult characters tend to be, but I do still appreciate YA stories. Just a few years ago, it was the primary age range that I was reading, but I still hold that these books hold a lot of value even for adults. However, I do think that there should also be a discussion about the impact that older readers may be having on the genre and whether the young adult label should really span the age range of 12 to 18 because that's quite a vast range of ages and maturity levels within that. Prompt number 2 says, 2 truths and a lie. What are 2 facts about YA literature and 1 lie or myth commonly believed about YA books? So I'm gonna say these at random, so leave your guess which is the lie in the comments down below. The first person point of view is often prevalent within YA books, but not all books are written from this perspective. That's going to be my first statement. The next statement is, YA books are overly simplistic and easy to write, which means they do not have the same level of literary merit as adult books have. And the third statement is, YA literature is not actually a genre, but rather it describes an age range that the books can be categorized under, similar to middle grade or adult. The next prompt is, if you could time travel with your favorite teenage protagonist, what would your time travel adventure be? How would your time travel companion be perceived by audiences past and present? And how might your time travel companion be perceived by readers in the future? So this could be 100 years from now. So I think that I would choose Jo March from Little Women as my time travel companion. And I'd love to time travel back to the Roaring 20s. So for me, it would be traveling back in time, but for her, it would actually be traveling forward in time since this book takes place around the era of the Civil War. And I think that Jo would fit right in with this time period, and especially with the rise of the literary movement at that time and the Harlem Renaissance. 1920 was also the year that the 19th Amendment was finally ratified, so this meant that women would have the right to vote, and I think that Jo March would really appreciate that as she was a major proponent for women's rights within Little Women. I think 100 years from now, Jo March might be seen very similarly to how she is now, but she might be seen as a little more antiquated than she is these days. I think she'd also be perceived as a precursor for the women to come after her, so these were the women that fought for our rights and allowed the women of the future to live in a more equitable society, and I think that those are things that are going to be remembered 100 years from now. Alright, the next prompt is this or that. This is about books and adaptations. Do you read the book before you watch the adaptation? Do you tend to prefer the book or the adaptation? Or do you think the book or adaptation appeals more to adults? So I usually prefer to read the book before I watch the adaptation, and I tend to think that I will end up preferring the book over the adaptation, which is usually true 8 or 9 times out of 10. However, I have seen adaptations before reading the book sometimes, and at times this is because I did not know that the movie or TV show that I was watching actually was an adaptation and that it was based on a book. At other times it was because I realized that it might still take me a while to get to the book and I was interested in knowing more about the story as soon as possible. So I can't say whether books or their adaptations tend to appeal more to adults. I think this just depends on each book and adaptation in question, so this has to be determined on a case-by-case basis and also on the adult in question. Prompt number 5 is another would you rather. Label the book YA or just let books be books. I think that labels are important and they should be kept and mentioned. Having books labeled as YA should mean something and ensure that these books are actually appropriate for teenage readers to pick up rather than simply lumping them in with other adult books. Adult books tend to have more complex themes which might be more difficult for younger readers to comprehend, and generally I think that labels are there for a reason. However, I don't think that labels should be a limiting factor or be limited to certain restrictions and defined by these. I think there can be some flexibility in how we label books as long as we remember the reason why the labels are actually there in the first place. Prompt number 6 is, when I grow up, is there a YA book you think would be successful for adult readers in the broader literary world? Yes, I think there are so many YA books that can fit this. There are a lot of them that are relevant to adults. Many YA books are in fact very successful amongst adult readers, even within the context of the broader literary community. And one book that I think does this particularly well is The Giver by Lois Douglas Lowry. This follows the story of a boy named Jonas who's living in a utopian society where pain and suffering have been fully eliminated. Everyone in the society is the same except for the receiver of memory and the giver. Jonas has been chosen as the next person to be the receiver of memory, and this person holds all of the society's collective past memories as he begins to learn more about the world's history and the cost of keeping their society controlled like this. This makes him question the society's values, and it leads to a lot of internal turmoil within Jonas. Prompt number 7 is The Wild Wind Blows If. What was your favorite YA book when you were a teen? Viewers can leave a wind emoji if they love the book you named as your favorite. So I really enjoyed The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I read a bunch of his books as a teenager, but my favorite books as a teen has to be the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book, Clockwork Angel, and this series follows Tessa, who learns that she is a warlock. So in this world, warlocks are half human, half demon creatures, and it follows her entrance into the supernatural society of Shadowhunters. These are half human, half angel creatures, and their main goal is to protect humanity from the looming threat of demons. I absolutely adore this series, and it's one of my absolute favorites. I read this as a teenager, and it still holds a special place in my heart. Prompt number 8 is Desert Island. Which YA book goes with you? The characters in that book will be with you on this deserted island. So I think on this deserted island, I would bring the Hunger Games with me, especially if the characters in the book will be following me to the island. I think that Katniss has some very useful skills that could be very applicable to living life on a deserted island. She would know which fruits are eligible, she could hunt animals for food, and even identify some medicinal herbs, which would be helpful to survive. Peeta is very good at camouflage, which would help us stay alive and avoid predators from finding us. And I also think that some of the other side characters could be useful because they have a lot of survival skills, like knowing how to make a fire, which would be needed to survive on a deserted island. The next prompt is Taboo. Describe the YA book you think everyone should read without saying words in the title or naming the author. I'll have you guess the book first without checking the description box for the answer. So leave your guesses in the comments and then you can check the description for the correct answer. Our main character is stuck between two worlds: her poor, mostly black neighborhood where she lives and the white prep school that she attends. She tries to strike a balance between these two worlds and keep them separate, but soon finds that this is impossible after her childhood best friend is murdered by a police officer. She faces a massive amount of pressure and strain from her community all around her, and she must find her voice and stand up for what is right. So leave your guesses in the comments and then check the description for the correct answer to this. And finally, it says to tag others. So I'm gonna leave the other people that I'm tagging to do this in the description as well. There's no pressure to do this if you are tagged, and if I didn't tag you but you would still like to take this on, please leave me linked in the description of your video, as I'd love to hear all of your answers. Alright, so that's gonna be it from me. If you like this video, give it a like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear your answers to some of these prompts in the comments down below. And wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, I hope that you're doing well, and I'll see you for another one soon. Bye!